Okay, welcome back to the program. Again, we're talking with Thibodaux Chief of Police Scott Silverii and Corporal Nadria Jones, as well as Corporal Timothy Lipscomb, all with the Police Department in Thibodaux. And we, again, want to thank you for joining us. And before the break, I know you had touched upon the DDAX program. And again, if you could tell me exactly what that is and share it with our audience, and maybe we can kind of continue our discussion.
Sure. Well, it's DDAX. It's data-driven approaches to crime and traffic safety. And it was a program back in 2009 that the Department of Justice and Department of Transportation had come up with this concept of when you look at incidences of crashes and incidents of crime, that there's a correlation where the two basically happen in the same place and in the same time. And it was just a theory at the time, and they had some of the academics weigh in, but there was never a field trial, a field test. So they had asked us, they'd asked me to, well, my sheriff's office when I was working in Lafourche Parish, through Sheriff Weber, to participate in a trial. And I was running the patrol division at the time, and it was a rough concept. Basically, you know, you map your crashes, map your crime, and put your cops there. Cops on dots is in the simplest form, and let's see what happens. So for about a year, we trudged along, you know, kind of archaic type of data analysis capabilities. But we progressed very fast and very rapidly because we saw the benefits that were paying off. And I continue to work hand in hand with NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, with the implementation of these programs and help them out by doing workshops or conferences and things like that. And when I came into the police department, we established it right off the bat as the cornerstone of the administration. And so much so to where now, you know, and a lot of the younger officers, which we have a lot of, they're so technically advanced anyway. They know the data. I mean, I'm ecstatic when I see a bar graph. Yeah. These guys are making and creating kernel densities and nearest neighbor hierarchy ellipses, and it's amazing when they see that. But what it does is it allows you to do your job with such a level of specificity and just laser focused to where you're not wasting any time on shift, maybe doing traffic enforcement on one side of the city where there's never been a crash. Right. Well, why are you there? Well, I remember being here last year. Yeah. Really? Is there any needs, any justification? So when we came in 2 years ago, when Tommy S.J. came in, we said we're going to work smarter. We're going to work more efficient. We're going to do things based on data and analysis and use the DDAX program. And one of the things is, and again, it's a simple concept. I know we mess it up with statistics and data and GIS mapping and all that. But again, if you take your high areas of crashes and your high areas of crime, and say if you had 2 layers and you lay those maps over, you'll start to see areas where the high areas start to match up. And where those areas marry, a very specific geography, that's called a hotspot. And once you have that geography identified, then you look for the days of the week that are busiest. And then when you find your days, you look for the hours of the day. So in effect, Jimmy, what we do, we're making a very concentrated effort, about 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, in the areas that are statistically highest for crashes and crime, for causing social harm to the people who live there. In our last area, our Hotspot 3, I know it lacks an original name, but it's Hotspot 3.
That's all right.
Yeah,
That's
so
okay.
we know there are at least 2 before, and hopefully more to come. Just to show that it's a kind of a disproportionate amount. Only 6% of the population resides in this particular hotspot area. 6% of the city's footprint is contained in here. But yet it was a disproportionate calls for service crimes and crashes. So because of whatever criminologistic characteristics are associated with the geography, it creates crime. So what we did, we implemented a hotspot area, and again, this area has been statistically high for at least the last 5 to 10 years. We went in 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, and with a high visibility enforcement operation, which means a lot of traffic stops based on probable cause. Now, even with increased traffic stops, we still maintain about a 64% warning ratio, where we're not, and I don't believe in victimizing the public with citations, but the idea is we put those blue lights on and crime goes down. And that's where guys like Tim Lipscomb come in when they lead the way with DWI enforcement. You know, they may be stopping somebody for a burnt tail light that turns into a fugitive attachment that maybe is a drunk driver. That's that incident. But with the displacement of benefits in the whole area where you can see the lights, crime shuts down. Right.
So and let me ask, if you don't mind, maybe Nadria, if we can bring her into the conversation. I mean, I'm sure you operate, you know, with the same background and know about the DDAX program. From your point of view, yes, sir. I mean, what have you observed about it? And, you know, just kind of explain it from your point of view.
Well, I find it, you know, people that want the police around, they don't mind. It's the criminals
Right.
They don't want us in that area. And when we go in, just the visibility, officer presence, I mean,
Right.
it shuts it down right there. You know, you're not going to have that trouble. The community loves it. I mean,
Right.
they appreciate what we do.
And so that's something that you've seen personally, where
Yes,
you've
sir.
noticed all of that, and
Yes.
okay, good.
I mean,
Because
yeah.
it makes a lot of sense, you know, presence, you know, in areas where you really need it, seems
sir.
like it would go ahead and, you know, bring down some of the crime in that area.
I mean, one incident, I worked DDAX one time before, and the lady was like, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you in the area. I mean, the criminal wouldn't tell you that.
No, no, that's right. That's a good point, though. But yeah, and Tim, let me kind of bring you in. I know the chief kind of mentioned you with regards to DWI enforcement, which we were going to talk about in a little bit. But tell them from your point of view, actually, what areas do you work in and maybe kind of specialize in?
Pretty much all of them.
Okay, well, that's
I
fine.
know last year I definitely had the most, you know, at the police department as far as, you know, stops for DWIs. This year, not so many. I've had a couple recruits ride with me, and I've kind of taught them the ways, you know, being an officer out there on the streets of Thibodaux. They're doing really well now. I actually have one of them that's beating me right now. Last year he beat me in total numbers for DWIs, so I guess I trained him good.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, I don't specify too much on anything. I pretty much do everything.
Yeah, and when you say DWIs, and we'll get into it and discuss it a little more, I mean, how does that normally work out? I mean, I don't know if there's a typical stop that you make, because everything I'm sure can be different, but when you make a stop, do you always make a stop knowing that you're going to be, you know, confronted with a DWI driver?
Not every time.
Okay.
Not every time. There are some times when you can make a stop, and you can tell by the way they drive, or just by the way they handle themselves when they pull over or anything like that, that you can tell, oh, this guy's probably going to be intoxicated. And then you make contact with him, and you smell an odor on him.
Right.
You know, and he's, you know, kind of out of it, can't speak well, you know, can't find his paperwork for his vehicle. That's all signs, you know, this guy's probably intoxicated. So you can't do it every time, but there are several times that I have done that.
Okay.
Where you can tell before you even get them out of the car.
Okay, well, that's a good point, and I know that y'all are very heavy on DWI enforcement, in the sense that obviously it's trying to prevent certainly more serious crimes. Not that DWI is not serious, it's just that we know what it can lead to in terms of tragedy.
You're right, and you know, one of the things we talk about the displacement of those benefits is when you go into a DDAX area that, you know, usually monopolizes your resources, when they're no longer that monopolized because the crashes and crimes have been reduced so much, it allows officers like Nadria and Tim to go out and be more proactive in the rest of the city. It allows us to do things like bicycle patrol, but we've got guys like Nadria and Tim, and when you give them the data, you know, I always say, you take a young guy, you say, a young officer, and you say, go out and be proactive. They usually wind up in internal affairs. But if you take a young officer and you say, this is where I want you to go, this is what I want you to do, this is when I want you to be there, and this is why I'm putting you there, you usually get fantastic results. And you know, we've increased our DWI production, but you know, again, we don't look at the outputs. Now, of course, you have to quantify your results, so the numbers do mean something. But the most significant number that we preach and we brag is the number 0. Because in last year, we've had 0 alcohol-related fatal crashes or serious injury crashes. That's the number. That's the outcome that we focus on. So whether it's 100, 200, or 500 DWIs, the number 0 is all that we truly care about.
Right, yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Let me do this. We need to take another break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Don't go away. We'll be right back.